March 4, 1944. 24,000 feet above Germany, west of Berlin. The sky is a hard, pale blue, thin and brittle with winter cold. Engines roar in layered thunder, 45,000 horsepower, droning together like a distant storm. To your left, stretching to the horizon, is the bomber stream. B-17s and B-24s, flying fortresses and liberators, crawl through the sky in tight box formations. Silver fuselages glint in the sun, wings flexing as the air bites around them. White contrails smear across the heavens, weaving a ghostly highway straight toward the heart of the Reich, Berlin. Inside one of those B-17s, sweat beads on the nose gunner's upper lip despite the freezing air. His gloved hands wrap tightly around the twin .50 caliber Brownings. The oxygen mask muffles his breath. Below him, Germany passes in a quilt of fields, forests, and smoking cities. They all know what Berlin means. First time the 8th Air Force is going all the way. First time they're punching straight at the capital in daylight. And every man in those bombers knows another thing. Something drilled into them from bitter experience over Schweinfurt, Regensburg, Bremen. Without fighter cover, they are meat. The interphone crackles in the B-17's headphones. "Skipper, formation looks good. No bandits yet." The tail gunner calls, his voice flat with the kind of tension that pretends to be calm. Yet, the pilot mutters, eyes scanning the sky. "They'll come. The Germans always come." 200 miles away, they are already waiting. On the outskirts of Berlin, in a Luftwaffe Jagerschwader briefing room, cigarette smoke hangs in a stale gray cloud under low beams. Maps cover the walls. Europe crisscrossed with colored pencil lines of recent raids and interception routes. Major Karl-Heinz Drexler, Gruppen commander, stands with his arms folded, leather flight jacket creaking softly. His hair is cropped short, his jaw clenched. He stares at the operations board where a junior officer has just pinned new colored markers along a path stretching from England into the Reich. 8th Air Force, straight at Berlin again. The staff officer says, tapping the board with a pencil. They mean to make this routine. Drexler's lip curls. "They will not reach Berlin in any strength," he replies. "They never do. Once the escorts turn back, we will cut them to pieces." Around the room, other officers nod. They've seen it before. American bombers coming in arrogant and heavy. Then, once their short-legged escorts are forced to turn for home, left alone over central Germany. Then the Himmelbett radar plots light up. Then the scramble bells. Then the climb, the sun, the contrails, and the killing. A younger lieutenant, his face still too smooth for someone with so many missions, raises a hesitant point. "Her major, there are new reports from the West. Rumors that the Americans now have long-range escorts. Fighters with drop tanks. They say Mustangs." Drexler cuts him off with a flat stare. "Propaganda and excuses from those who failed to do their duty," he says. "No single-engine fighter can escort bombers from England to Berlin and back. It is simple mathematics." He turns back to the map, tapping the line marked with bomber symbols. "Their escorts will turn back somewhere around the Ruhr. As always, we will wait until they are committed, past the point of return, and then we strike. The Führer demands we make this raid their last." The room murmurs assent. Chalk squeaks as interception altitudes and rendezvous points are marked. Squadrons are assigned, fuel loads calculated. Outside, ground crews work in the cold, their breath steaming as they prepare BF-109s and FW-190s, topping off fuel tanks, loading 20mm cannon belts round after round. No one here truly believes the Americans could have solved that problem. A fighter that can run with a bomber stream all the way from England to Berlin and back. Absurd. It would change everything. So, they tell themselves, it cannot be true. Back over Germany, the bomber formation plows east. The cold gnaws through heated suits and thick gloves. Turrets squeak as they rotate. Gunners scan the high 12 o'clock position where black specks have so often appeared in the past. German fighters lining up for head-on attacks. The squadron's radio operator listens to the chatter from other groups. "Red leader, you seeing anything?" "Negative, just contrails. Wait, check your high 3 o'clock." The pilot glances out, jaw set, expecting any minute to hear the dreaded words. Fighter cover turning back. He remembers Schweinfurt. Remembered hearing escorts call, "bingo fuel." Watched them peel away, small and sleek. back toward England, leaving the bombers to face the gauntlet alone. He remembers the silence that followed on the interphone, that sense of being naked in a sky full of guns. Today, he's waiting for that silence again. But it doesn't come. Instead, the command crackles through. Lead, this is Guardian 1. We're still with you. Stay tight. Berlin's ahead. The pilot blinks. He looks down at his mission brief, at the fuel calculations, at the expected point where escorts must turn back. They're past it. He glances right, then sees them. Sleek shapes cutting through the sky alongside the formation. Long noses, bubble canopies, broad laminar flow wings. Drop tanks slung under their bellies. P-51 Mustangs. One banks closer, wings rocking in a lazy, confident roll. The pilot inside raises a gloved hand and gives a casual waggle. His headset is probably filled with jokes, chatter, maybe even boredom. But from the bomber cockpit, he looks like a guardian angel. Jesus, the co-pilot whispers. They're still here. They're actually still here. The nose gunner watches one Mustang slide into position above and ahead of the formation, the sun flashing off its canopy. For the first time on a long raid deep into Germany, the bone-deep, familiar dread eases. Just a little. Maybe, just maybe, today will be different. In a Luftwaffe radar station west of Berlin, a green screen sweeps in its endless circle. Blips crawl across its face, dozens, then hundreds. The operator swallows. Plotting large bomber formation at Angels 2-4, course east. More than yesterday. Much more. The controller leans in, eyes narrowing. And the escorts? Where do they turn back? The operator hesitates. They don't, Herr Hauptmann. Tracks still with the bombers. Fast ones. Single engine. The controller scowls. That's not possible. You've misread the scope. He hasn't. But no one here is ready to accept what the screen is telling them. The Americans are coming to Berlin in daylight. And this time, they are not alone. The warning sirens scream across Luftwaffe bases surrounding Berlin. Mechanics leap from tool carts. Pilots sprint from briefing rooms, flight jackets flapping behind them. Propellers cough to life in staggered bursts, then roar. FW-190s and BF-109s taxied fast, wheels bouncing over frozen runway cracks. Major Drexler climbs into his BF-109G6, sliding the canopy shut with a hard metallic clack. His gloved fingers tighten around the throttle. He repeats the impossible words in his head. Escorts still with the bombers. No, he won't believe it until he sees it and destroys them. He shoves the throttle forward. The fighter jerks, then surges down the runway. Tail lifting, trees rushing past in a gray blur. The wheels leave the earth, Berlin falling away beneath him. Falkstaffel, form on me. Climb to 26,000. We will hit them head on, Drexler orders. His voice hides the uneasy crack in his confidence. High above, the sun gleams off the bomber stream like an armada of steel castles. Inside a B-17 called Sweet Revenge, waist gunner Corporal Eddie Palmer grips his .50 caliber handles, watching vapor trails spiral in from above. Fighters. High 1 o'clock, someone shouts. Tiny dots grow rapidly. Black crosses. The Luftwaffe is coming. But today, something is different. The Mustangs see the Germans first. Captain Richard Duke Cartwright, leader of the P-51 escort group, call sign Guardian 1, spots the oncoming swarm. His Mustang, Southern Lady, shudders gently in the wind as he banks to intercept. Guardians, this is Duke, he says calmly over the radio. We've got trade inbound. Time to earn our pay. Keep them away from the heavies. A chorus of Roger that, and let's dance, crackles in reply. Duke rolls inverted, nose down, and the Mustang dives like a stooping hawk, silver fuselage slicing the thin air. He thumbs the gun switch. The vibration shifts, 6 Browning M2s now hot and waiting. The Germans spot them halfway through the dive. What? Fighters. Amerikanisch Jaeger. Confusion, then disbelief over German radios. Drexler's eyes widen inside his canopy. No, too far from the coast. They cannot be Mustangs. And yet, they are. The first pair of P-51s slash down through the German formation at a closing speed of nearly 800 miles per hour. Tracers stitch through a 109's engine cowling. Smoke bursts from the fuselage. The fighter tumbles out of the sky in a spiraling black smear. The air explodes into chaos. German pilots, trained to hunt bombers, not dual escorts this deep in Reich air, find themselves reacting instead of attacking. A young lieutenant curses as a Mustang slides onto his six. He jerks the stick, pulling hard, but the American stays glued to his tail. The Mustang is faster, climbs better, dives harder. The 109 is prey now. Drexler tries to push through the chaos. He must reach the bombers, but every turn, every climb, a Mustang blocks his path. One American fighter latches onto his formation's flank, engine bay shimmering with heat, drop tanks jettisoning in silver flashes. Drexler grits his teeth. Brake! Brake! His wingman pulls too late. A burst of .50 caliber fire rips through the canopy. Glass explodes. Tracer sparks dance across the wings. The 109 rolls inverted, oil streaming, then disappears below cloud. Drexler feels a punch of horror deep in his gut. This is not how it's supposed to go. Meanwhile, the bombers thunder on, almost untouched. In sweet revenge, Eddie Palmer laughs, a sharp burst of relief. They ain't getting through. Look at him. Those Mustangs are tearing him apart. Outside his window, a Mustang pilot flashes by, chasing a German fighter that's running for safety. The bomber crew, men who once braced for a sky swarming with enemy fighters, suddenly feel invincible. For the first time in the long daylight war over Europe, the attackers are not the Germans. The attackers are Americans. Drexler fights toward altitude, breathing hard, scanning for another angle. But every vector, every turn, the Mustangs are waiting. He makes one last attempt, diving for the bomber stream, and finds himself face-to-face with Captain Cartwright's Mustang. Duke squeezes the trigger. Orange tracers flicker like sparks from a welder's torch. Metal tears. Coolant sprays. Drexler's 109 shudders violently. Red warning lights flash inside his cockpit. The engine howls in agony. He has no choice. He bails. The canopy pops. Frigid wind slams him. Gravity snatches him from the cockpit. The parachute deploys in a violent jerk. As Drexler drifts beneath the silk canopy through the thin March air, he stares upward, watching his homeland sky empty of German fighters. The Mustangs hold the heights. The bombers hold formation. And Berlin lies dead ahead. Something inside him breaks. The skies are no longer theirs. Below on the ground, civilians glance up, astonished, as more bombers than ever before continue east, unchallenged, implacable. A new reality has arrived over the Third Reich. The Americans can reach anywhere, anytime. With fighter protection, the Luftwaffe's reign is ending. Drexler's parachute sways in the icy wind as he drifts earthward. He can see the distant flashes on the horizon, Berlin, where the bombers are headed, where he was supposed to stop them. Below, a patchwork of farms and winter fields creeps closer. A plume of black smoke marks what used to be his engine, a reminder of what he now knows to be true. Germany no longer owns the air. His boots hit the frozen ground hard. The parachute collapses into a heap of white silk behind him. He rips off his oxygen mask, breath steaming in the March cold, and slams a fist into the earth. This war has tilted. A shift so violent that even the proudest Luftwaffe officers can feel it. No number of medals or propaganda can mask the truth he just witnessed firsthand. American fighters have arrived deep over German soil, and they're staying. High altitude, Bomber Formation Center. Captain Henry Morris, pilot of Sweet Revenge, keeps his eyes forward. Steady, boys, almost to target. Below the glass nose, Berlin emerges, massive, sprawling, ominous. Rows of buildings, rail yards, factories, and flak towers rise like jagged teeth. The city that once terrified bomber crews now looks within reach. Mustangs weave above and around the formation, an armored cage of speed and steel. Gunners in every fortress watch in awe. No swarms of German fighters. No panic. No slaughter. Instead, American dominance holds. Henry glances to his co-pilot. We couldn't dream of this a year ago. The co-pilot nods slowly, eyes wide. It's like the sky belongs to us now. Deep inside Berlin, 88mm flak guns prepare to fire. Crewmen crank elevation wheels. Ammunition runners shove heavy black shells into ready racks. Officers bark coordinates fed from rangefinders and sound locators. One gunner stare upward nervously. They're coming through without losing formation. His sergeant growls back. Then aim better. Berlin must not burn today. But even as the flak gunners work feverishly, there is dread. Flak can hurt the Americans. Flak can make them bleed. But flak cannot stop them. Not anymore. Inside the Reich's Luftwaffe Ministerium, the German Air Ministry, field telephones shriek nonstop. Officers pace the floor, maps piled with casualty figures that keep climbing. A general slams the handset down, knuckles white with fury. Where are our fighters? A staff colonel answers, pale and shaken. Engaged by escorts. Heavy resistance. Reports say P-51 Mustangs, sir. Many Mustangs. It's impossible, the general snaps. Mustangs cannot escort bombers to Berlin. And yet, the radar reports, the frantic calls from squadron leaders, the empty airspace around the bomber stream. They all say the same thing. Impossible is happening. 24,000 feet over Berlin. Bomb bay doors open. Cold air rips through the fuselage as the first wave lines up the target. The Erkner Armaments Plant, a vital engine facility. Bombardier Lieutenant Jacobs holds the bomb sight steady. Steady, bombs away. The bombs drop in unbroken columns, disappearing into the mist below. Seconds later, Berlin convulses with fire. Shockwaves ripple. Factories crack open. Flames leap skyward like vengeful phantoms. Other groups hit rail yards, choking the city's arteries. Electric power plants, darkening entire districts. Chemical facilities, igniting clouds of black smoke that blot out the sun. This isn't a raid the Luftwaffe can claim victory over with propaganda. This is Berlin under siege. German civilians, once assured by the Reich that daylight bombing was impossible, stand frozen in the streets. They watch the sky burn white with contrails and the sun glinting off silver wings. A man whispers to his family. They said the Americans could not reach us in the day. His voice trails off as another formation appears behind the first. And they said, our fighters would always protect us. A distant explosion shakes the cobblestones. The lie is dead, and everyone sees the truth in the daylight. Up in the sky, Captain Cartwright checks his fuel, still good. He glances down at the bombers finishing their runs and turning for home. His voice steadies. Guardians, keep the wolves off their backs. We take them all the way. A simple sentence, but it means the end of the Luftwaffe's dominance. The German pilots who survive this day will land, climb from their cockpits, and stare at the ground, silent, knowing they faced a future they cannot stop. The Mustang has rewritten the war, and Berlin feels the first impact. The skies belong to the Allies now. By the time the bomber stream turns west, Berlin burns beneath a choking column of smoke, black, oily, uninterrupted. The bombers hold formation. Their escorts are still with them, and the Luftwaffe is nowhere to be seen, not in any strength that matters. Captain Henry Morris glances back over his shoulder. Look at that, he murmurs. Still with us, all the way. It's more than aircraft range. It's psychological warfare. The Mustangs don't just fight, they follow. Every mile the bombers travel westward under fighter protection is another crack in German morale. Major Drexler limps into a field hospital hours after bailing out. His flight suit is torn, his pride shredded. A medic tries to check his vitals, but Drexler waves him off, grabbing a radio to call his Gruppenstab. Report, he demands, voice strained. The reply is fragmented, defeated. Many aircraft lost, others scattered. The Americans. The officer hesitates, swallowing grief. They escorted all the way to Berlin, her major. We could not stop them. Drexler collapses on a nearby chair, staring blankly into space. The Luftwaffe had always believed in two undeniable truths. American fighters were short-ranged. German interceptors would always get their chance to kill. Both truths died today. Airfield at Wernuchen, Luftwaffe forward base. Pilots gather near the operations hut, helmets in hand. The air stinks of gasoline, oil, and frustration. A young sergeant pilot, fresh-faced, terrified, asks the question none want to say aloud. If the Americans can escort bombers to Berlin, what chance do we have left? No one answers. Veteran aces stare toward the west, toward the endless horizon from which bomber streams now come like weather systems. Some clench fists. Others simply hang their heads. They were not defeated by numbers. They were defeated by distance. Meanwhile, in the bomber stream, Eddie Palmer, the waist gunner in Sweet Revenge, breathes easier. For the first time in months, he's not expecting death at every second. The sky, Usually a haunted realm full of sudden fire, now feels secure. He leans to the ball turret gunner. Remember Schweinfurt? Remember wanting to jump out just to make it stop? The ball turret gunner nods grimly. Now look, Mustangs on every angle. I think we're gonna make it home. Eddie grins, a real grin, not the forced one he uses before takeoff. We are, he says. God bless him, we are. Captain Cartwright checks his wingman's position. Fuel low, but still enough for the ride back. Guardians will stay high. Pick off any stragglers trying to hit from the rear. The reply from his squadron is steady, confident. Not bravado, not luck. Control. This is what winning feels like. The Mustangs soar above the bomber formation, like Steel Eagle sentinels, making sure the returning aviators have nothing but empty sky to worry about. The bombers aren't just surviving. They're winning. Luftwaffe High Command receives casualty reports into the night. Black Circle fighters destroyed, too many. Black Circle aces missing, too many. Black Circle bombers stopped, 0. An intelligence officer lays a single sheet of paper on a general's desk. P-51 Mustang combat radius with drop tanks now covers Berlin and beyond. The general stares at the numbers, each one a nail in the Luftwaffe's coffin. He whispers to himself. Then the war in the air is lost. And he knows something darker than fear. Soon, Germany will follow. As Sweet Revenge and hundreds of other bombers cross the Dutch coast, the sun dips low behind them, setting fire to the evening sky. The Mustangs begin to peel away, fuel nearly spent. Before leaving, a Mustang pilot rocks his wings one final time, saluting the men he just saved. Eddie Palmer presses a gloved hand against the window. Thanks, boys, he says softly. See you back at base. For the first time, bomber crews feel something they haven't felt since the war began. Confidence. On airfields across Germany, pilots stare up at the contrails fading into dusk. The message written in those white streaks is clear. The Americans can reach anywhere, and they will return tomorrow. The Luftwaffe has lost its shield, and from now on, every German city lies naked beneath the daylight. The bombers approach the North Sea, engines humming like a chorus of survival. The coastline, once a distant hope, now spreads beneath them like a promise fulfilled. Inside Sweet Revenge, relief transforms the cramped metal fuselage. Shoulders sag. A few men laugh. Some men cry. Others stare outward quietly, letting the feeling sink in. They lived. And they lived because the Mustangs stayed. Lieutenant Jacobs, the bombardier, removes his headset and whispers. This changes everything. The pilot nods. We'll see Berlin again. And every city behind it. East of Berlin, Major Drexler finally stands alone under a sky that seems far too wide. He watches smoke drift upward. Thick, angry, undeniable, from the direction of the city he swore to defend. His hands shake. He remembers the day he earned his pilot's wings, believing he would defend the fatherland's skies, believing the Luftwaffe was unbeatable. But now, he has seen what the Americans have created, a fighter that renders his tactics and his confidence obsolete. Drexler touches the iron cross pinned to his chest. What does it mean now? Awards cannot shoot down Mustangs. Courage cannot expand a plane's range. Pride cannot defeat physics. Above him, one of his surviving pilots limps home, smoke trailing from a battered engine. As the 109 wobbles toward base, Drexler finally understands. His generation of airmen is no longer feared. They are hunted. In Washington and London, the victory over Berlin is celebrated quietly, but decisively. Commanders study the day's reports. Escorts, effective. Bombers, protected. Losses, acceptable. Enemy fighters, disrupted. Objective, achieved. It reads like a script for a war that is finally turning in their favor. General James Doolittle, new commander of the 8th Air Force, here's the final line of a briefing. Our boys hit Berlin and came home. He allows himself the faintest of smiles. This is just the beginning. On the return flight, Sweet Revenge touches down at a muddy English airfield. Wheels screech. Flaps groan. The bomber rolls to a stop, engines coughing to silence. Eddie Palmer jumps down from the fuselage ladder, boots slamming the runway. He stretches his cramped back, breathes the thick English air, and looks toward the squadron of Mustangs taxiing in. One Mustang parks beside the bombers, canopy sliding back. Smoke and oil streak the fuselage, proof of the fight it endured. The pilot removes his oxygen mask and grins down at Eddie. Hell of a view from up there, huh? Eddie chuckles, voice shaky with gratitude. You boys kept us alive. Owe you more than a beer. The Mustang pilot taps the side of his plane. That's what she's built for. Wing Commander's Office. RAF Debden. Maps unrolled, mission logs annotated, mechanics prepping for tomorrow. The planning never stops. Cartwright stands over a table of call signs, some crossed out, but far fewer than before. Losing friends never gets easier. But today, a new feeling has stepped into the room beside the grief. Hope. We'll take them back again tomorrow, he says. The intelligence officer nods. And the day after that, Cartwright clenches a fist, not in anger, but in determination. Berlin, Leipzig, Munich, anywhere their war machinery hides, will be there. Meanwhile, in Germany, a young Luftwaffe replacement pilot sits in silence, staring at his boots. He hears the returning veterans speak in hushed voices, voices without swagger. One mutters, "They were Mustangs. No doubt. They chased us. They hunted us." Another lights a cigarette with trembling fingers. "We cannot win the daylight war anymore." The replacement swallows hard. He has yet to fly his first combat mission. And already, the veterans speak of defeat. Night falls across Europe. Cities dig victims from rubble. Families wonder what tomorrow brings. Aircrews steel themselves for another dawn. Yet the world has changed. For the first time, Germany's enemies strike its heart in daylight, and their fighters return home at dusk. The era of the Luftwaffe terror is ending. A new kind of fear has taken root in the Reich. Fear of the Mustang's shadow. Dawn, the following day. RAF ground crews yank chocks from Mustang landing gear. Drop tanks are bolted on. Armorers feed fresh belts of .50 caliber rounds into open gun bays. Engineers wipe frost from canopies. The pilots slide into their cockpits. Familiar motion now etched into muscle memory. Another mission. Another deep strike. Captain Cartwright settles into Southern Lady, hands gliding over switches, feeling the hum of a machine born to chase victory. He looks toward the bomber stream assembling above the base, climbing, circling, preparing to strike the Reich once more. A ground crewman gives him a thumbs up. Engines roar. Mustangs leap down the runway like silver arrows loosed from the bow. Their target, Leipzig. Their message, Berlin was not a fluke. Across Germany, radio operators listen with dread as early warning stations map the incoming formations. One officer whispers to another, "Back again? Already." The reply comes, broken, half disbelief, half resignation. They're not waiting anymore. They don't fear us now. The Luftwaffe scrambles, but fewer fighters respond each morning. Battle-worn pilots. Worsening fuel shortages. A sky that feels hostile. The Reich's shield is cracking. Major Drexler, arm bandaged from shrapnel, watches another ragged squadron take off. He recognizes too many inexperienced faces. Too many men who will never return. He thinks of the P-51's dark silhouette cutting across the sun. He thinks of how easily it carved through his unit, how much territory it covered, how effortlessly it denied the Luftwaffe its prey. A single truth has lodged itself deep in his mind. The war in the air is no longer a contest. It is a hunt. He turns away from the runway, unable to watch them leave. He cannot bear to watch them not come back. Somewhere over Germany, sweet revenge flies again, one more mission in a long war. Eddie Palmer mans his gun position, but today he scans the sky with a different kind of vigilance. Not fear. Confidence. Contrails appear above, lean, fast, protective. The Mustangs are here. The crew doesn't cheer. They don't speak. They simply believe. Henry Morris, hands steady on the controls, looks out at the fighters slicing the blue. "You think the Germans have figured it out yet?" his co-pilot asks. Henry nods slowly. "Yeah, they figured it out yesterday." Berlin, months later. Factories sit silent. Oil reserves burn black in distant fields. Rail networks are shattered skeletons of steel. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, is a shadow. Scattered. Desperate. Bleeding pilots faster than planes. All because the Americans solved one problem. How to bring the fight all the way to Berlin and back. The Mustang did not just escort bombers. It escorted the future into the German sky. On a quiet night in the spring of 1945, as Allied troops close in on the capital, a former ace, once proud, once arrogant, sits beside the ruins of a flak tower. He sifts through rubble with dirty hands and remembers the day Mustangs first appeared over Berlin. That was the day he knew the war was lost. Long before the armies broke through. Long before the flags changed hands. The moment the skies turned American, Germany began to fall. In England, Captain Richard Duke Cartwright stands before a line of Mustangs, paint-worn, exhaust-streaked, warriors that carried hope on every mission. He places a hand on the cool fuselage of Southern Lady. A mechanic approaches him. "You boys gave the bombers a fighting chance," he says. Cartwright shakes his head. "No," he replies. "We gave the Luftwaffe a reason to surrender the sky." He looks upward, toward the fading contrails of evening. "Because once we showed them we could go all the way, there was nowhere left for them to hide." Narrator, closing lines. The P-51 Mustang did more than escort bombers. It shattered the Luftwaffe's will to fight. It turned the skies into Allied territory. And it proved that the war could be won, because now the enemy could be reached anywhere. The German officers who once laughed at the idea of long-range escorts had to face a new reality. The Mustangs were already over Berlin, and they would never turn back.